20 verses 24 to 31. John 20 verses 24 to 31. Now Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nails marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe it." A week later his disciples were in the house again and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed." Jesus did many other miracles, miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Thank you. Sorry about that. Hope your carpet's okay. In 1966, well before King Charles was even Prince of Wales, Cilla Black sang the hit song. Well, she sang lots of songs, but this one in particular perhaps the most important question anybody could ever ask. I wonder if you know what the song might be.
What's it all about?
Sorry?
What's it all about?
Well done. Oh, there's a few people who know. What's it all about? Do you know when she first approached to sing this song, she said to Brian Epstein, her manager, "I can't do this. For a start, Alfie, you call your dog Alfie. Couldn't it be Tarquin or something like that?" The words, "What's it all about, Alfie? Is it just for the moment we live? What's it all about when you're sorted out, Alfie? Are we meant to be take more than we give? Are we meant to be kind?" and so on. And of course, the question is, what's it all about? Following on from that question, I've got three more simple, but at the same time, I think profound questions to ask you. And they're these. The first question is this: do you really know what you believe about life? Do you really know what you believe about life? The second question is, do you really know why you believe what you believe about life? Do you really know why you believe what you believe about life? And my third question is this: does what you believe really satisfy your soul? Does what you believe really satisfy your soul? A little girl asked her mother, "Where did people come from, Mum?" Her mother answered, "Well, God made Adam and Eve, and they had children, and that's how people were made." A couple of days later, she asked her dad the same question. Her father answered, "Well, many years ago, there were monkeys, and the human race evolved from them." The confused little girl returned to her mother and said, "Mummy, how is it that you told me that we were created by God, but Daddy told me we came from monkeys?" Her mother answered, "Well, dear, it's very simple. I told you about my side of the family, and he told you about his." There were two babies in a room. One asked the other, "Do you believe in a life after delivery?" The other replied, "Why, of course, there has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here to prepare ourselves for what will be later." "Nonsense," said the first. "There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" The second said, "Well, I don't know, but there may be more light than here. Maybe we will walk with our legs and eat with our mouths. Maybe we will have other senses that we can't understand now." First replied, that's absurd. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything else we need. Life after delivery is logical foolishness. The second insisted, well, I think there's something. Maybe it's different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore. And the first replied, nonsense. Anyway, if there is life, then why has no one ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery there's nothing but darkness, silence and oblivion. Takes us nowhere. Well, I don't know, said the second. But certainly we will meet Mother, and she'll take care of us. First replied, Mother? Do you actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now? The second said, well, she's all around us. We're surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would not and could not exist. First retorted, well, I don't see her, so it's only logical that she doesn't exist. To which the second replied, but sometimes if you're silent and you focus and really listen, you can perceive her presence and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above. And as for logic, where do you think that comes from? As for thinking, well, where does that come from? And what about all this complex stuff around us? If one bit was missing, none of it would work. How did that happen? No, I'm sure it's got something to do with Mother. Remember my 3 questions? Do you really know what you believe about life? Do you really know why you believe what you believe? And does what you believe really satisfy your soul? That little girl wanted to know, and the reply she got did not satisfy her soul. She was in conflict. And when it came to the babies in the womb, well, do you remember the old proverb? There's none so blind as those who will not see. Have you ever heard of someone called Doubting Thomas? You know the term, don't you? It comes from here. Jesus has appeared to his disciples, and after he's risen from the dead, and yes, astonishing as it sounds, Jesus lived a perfect life, died a horrible death, and rose from the dead, and appeared to hundreds of people actually, including his disciples on several occasions. So, I look at these passage in the context of those questions. Our first question, do you really know what you believe about life? For Thomas, he'd spent 3 years being with this man called Jesus. He'd accompanied him on travels, been amazed at his teaching and witnessed his astonishing miracles. Like the other disciples, Thomas had really begun to believe that Jesus actually may be who he said he was. Thomas wanted to place his trust in him. He wanted to believe and depend on him. But Jesus was now dead. Or so Thomas thought. What about you? That's Thomas. Let me clarify that a bit for you and for me. Do you really know what or who you trust and depend upon? You may say, oh, you've got it wrong, I'm independent. I depend on no one. Really? Let me ask you a simple question. After our time together this morning, and after you've had some lunch, will you get in a four-wheeled vehicle over there, or down here or somewhere, and will you drive down the road and go left because you can't go right, which I found out this morning. Will you drive along the road, and then, as you drive along the road, will you depend that the guy coming at you at 30 or 40 miles an hour is going to stay on this side of the road? Of course you do. Of course I do. It's interesting, isn't it? We all depend on things, but actually, we don't realise we do. So, if you daily place your trust in an unknown stranger who's driving, which I know I do as well, and actually people put their trust in me, do you really know what or who you depend on for the far greater question asked by Scylla? What is life all about? You know what you believe? What about our second question? Do you really have any idea why you believe what you believe about Scylla's question? For Thomas, when he faced with the news that Jesus was risen from the dead, he wanted to see Christ's wounds, his hands and his side. He based his belief on what? His why is based on seeing is believing. How often have you heard that? Seeing is believing. So what about you and me? Back to our driving scenario. Another simple question. Do you really know why you trust and depend on the guy coming the other way to stay on this side of the road? Have you ever thought about it? Why do you depend upon it? You don't know him. You have no idea who he is. You have no idea of his driving skills. You have no idea of his intentions. You have no idea whether he's angry with his missus, and therefore he's not taking any notice of what's coming the other way. No idea whatsoever. And yet you trust and depend upon him. Strange, isn't it? Very, very interesting. So, if we daily place our trust in strangers with a simple thing like driving, with no idea why we've got such confidence, do we really have any idea why we believe what we believe about the far greater question of life itself? Do you know why you believe? This is really important. And so to my third question, does what you believe really satisfy your soul? For Thomas, he saw and believed. And he declared, "My Lord and my God." He wanted to believe that Jesus was the Son of God, and now he did. It satisfied his soul. This man he had followed was God after all. In believing and depending on Jesus, his soul was finally satisfied. So what about you and me? Does who or what you or I depend upon really satisfy our souls? Does what you believe about the greatest question of life itself really satisfy your own soul? You may say it's all right for Thomas. He saw and so he believed. But hear what Jesus went on to say. Because you have seen me, Thomas, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. And John, who wrote these words, went on to say, but these things are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. Unless you and I have actually seen Jesus, we're one of those people. These words are written for us. Anyone here actually seen Jesus? No. These words are written for us that we may believe. So, does what you believe or what I believe about the greatest question we can ever ask really satisfy our soul? And what is the greatest question? It's this. What do you actually believe about Jesus Christ? That's it. That's it. Is he the Son of God or not? Is he your Redeemer or isn't he your Redeemer? Many people like to ask another question. Does it really matter what we believe? What difference does it make? Does what we believe really affect how we live, how we see ourselves and see other people? Have a listen to this poem, which has been adapted from the book Full Moon Rising. It goes like this. I heard a cosmic tale and wondered if it's true. The moon believed the story, and this is what he'd do. He thought each night that his great might could make the darkness flee. And like a kite, he scaled the heights and said, hey, look at me. It's really strange, but he could change his shape throughout the year. His face would change, then rearrange and sometimes disappear. He loved the thought that cosmonauts would visit him in space, and even better, astronauts had danced across his face. He loved that he could cause the sea to rise and swell each day. Then all could see how mightily he'd pull the waves away. He'd boast all day and love to say, "I am the greatest light," until one day a piercing ray gave him a stunning sight. He saw his pride and then he cried for all that he had done, for he had lied when he denied his light came from the sun. So now each night a new delight is what he loves the most. Reflecting light with all his might, the sun is now his boast. So God, I pray for grace each day to find the joy that's true in all my days and all my ways, in making much of you. I suggest that what we believe does matter how we live, does matter how we see ourselves, and does matter how we see other people. And finally, I have another poem for you. This time written by an American soldier in Vietnam in the early 70s. Lord God, I have never spoken to you, but now I want to say, how do you do? You see, God, they told me you didn't exist, and like a fool I believed all this. Last night from a shell hole I saw your sky. I figured right then they'd told me a lie. Had I taken the time to see the things you made, I would have known they weren't calling a spade a spade. I wonder, God, if you'd take my hand. Somehow I feel you'll understand. Funny how I had to come to this hellish place before I had time to see your face. I guess there really isn't much more to say, but I'm sure glad, God, that I met you today. I guess 0 hour will soon be here. I'm not afraid since I know you're near. The signal. Well, God, it's time to go. I liked you lots, I want you to know. Look now, this will be a horrible fight. Who knows, I may come to your house tonight. Though I wasn't friendly to you before, I wonder, God, if you'd wait at the door. Look, I'm crying. I'm shedding tears. I'll have to go now, God, goodbye. Strange now, since I met you, I'm not afraid to die. There's someone who finally knew who he depended upon. And he knew why he depended upon him. And it satisfied his soul. Shall we together sing our last song? Number 673, There is a Redeemer. And as you perhaps look this up and so on, I heard the other day something about Queen Victoria, who is great-great-great-grandmother of King Charles. And she said this, that she wanted Christ to come again in her own lifetime so she could be the first to cast her crown before her Redeemer. One day we will all know, and every knee will bow. May it be yours that bows too.